I think we should trust our feelings very little whenever we are involved with a romantic relationship. Okay?
Yeah.
Be very slow. Have other people speak into your life.
Right.
And I think today we live in a society where young people, they're far more interested in the wedding than they are the marriage.
Yes.
And so I was just journaling, and it was a lot of just very personal things, very heartbroken things, but it wasn't necessarily for the purpose of publication. But I looked at it a couple months later, and I was like, wait a minute. I think I accidentally wrote a book.
How do you think your generation is navigating the age of social media?
The answer was no for a long time, and that really hurt. But in that moment, I felt God told me to trust him. God told me he was enough for me in that moment, even if the answer was no forever. My character shows up, pulls off the entire children's event, and then leaves.
You
And
are
there's
the party.
I am the party.
That's well worth whatever you charge.
Yes, it's fun.
I would be like, take all my money.
So I went to Disney World in 2017 with the Disney College program. Some people asked me if after working there and seeing how it works and going behind the stage and in the utilidors, if it ruined the magic. And I was like,
You're listening to the Life in Action podcast, Faith, Finance, and Family. Here are your hosts, Mike and Philip.
Hey, welcome back to Life in Action. This is Mike.
Hey, and this is Philip Baker.
Hey, Philip, it's good to have you back in the game room today. And in the game room, we have an amazing young lady named Hannah Petterefer. And
All right.
we're going to talk about her life, her book that she just wrote called Open Hands. Really, really good book. I got an opportunity to read it in the last couple of days.
Wow.
And so we're going to get into it. Let me tell you a little bit about when I got to meet her. I met her at her book signing at a kind of like a Christian
Right.
business meeting that they did. And I was so impressed with her and with her speech that she gave.
Yeah.
I was like, man, we got to get her on the podcast. And so I asked, and she said yes. So
All right. Well, I know you called me and you were impressed.
Yes, I was,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So now we get to talk to her.
It was my first time going to that meeting, and I actually I thought I sat in the back because I didn't want to be like and I wanted to be on the front row, right in front of you. So she's 27. She's an entrepreneur. She started her own business. She wrote this book just recently. It's fresh out the gate, and we'll talk a lot about that today. She is a ballet instructor, and she did ballet her whole life. And she's a really cool person. So let's get into it.
Man.
Hannah, welcome to the show.
Yeah.
well, I have some big shoes to fill, and I have Cinderella-sized feet. So,
Oh wow, yeah. So
Good to meet you, Hannah.
well, you'll do fine.
yes,
So
I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much.
good to have you. So let's open up and let's just talk about your life a little bit. Where you're from, Lake Charles.
Yes, sir. From here. My dad's from here. I love that I can't go anywhere without bumping into someone I know here. And my dad's like that. And every now and then I'll know someone that he doesn't know. And I feel like that's me making it, you know?
Do you ever have any aspirations of living in the big city, or you just like the smaller town? I guess we're not small, but
I did a Q&A on my Instagram yesterday, and one person asked me what I wanted to be when I was a kid. And I said, would you believe me if I said that I wanted to be a ballet teacher, entrepreneur, author when I was a kid?
no way.
But I went through a small phase where I thought I was going to be this elite fashion designer. But when I discovered that I had to live in New York City and be like this city person, I was like, no, not for me. So I didn't really aspire to live in the big city. I love the community and my family here. But I always have had very big aspirations. So instead of, for example, practicing my wedding vows as a kid, you know, a lot of girls are dreaming about getting married and have kids. And I also dream of that. But I was like practicing my Nobel Peace Award speech, you know, like I'm like interviewing for my best-selling book as a child. I always thought that's what I would do.
Dreaming big. We like you, Hannah. You're
Yes,
you're in
sir.
the right place.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I never became a mailman. That's apparently what I wanted to be when I was a kid.
Oh, you know what? Mailmen have cool lives
They
too.
do. It's just the running away from the dogs can kind of get a little stressful.
Maybe don't do that here. It's too hot.
It is very hot. So your book, Open Hands, what made you want to write a book so young? I mean, most people are like in their 50s writing books, and you're, no offense, Philip, but
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
but you're very young, and I've never really known that many people that were like, hey, I'm 26, I'm gonna write a book.
Where did that thought come from?
Well, God.
Yeah.
Because although I have just disclaimed that I always thought I would write a book and publish it, I definitely anticipated that being later in my life after I've lived more, especially if it was a nonfiction book. So this was an accident.
Okay.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
I loved to write, and I had maintained a blog from high school until I got too busy in college. And then a season of my life kind of opened up where there was less busy, and I started to blog again. And so I was working on this series, what I thought. I was dealing with a few things in life that I couldn't understand, like why these things were happening and how to process it in a biblical way.
Yeah.
And so I was just journaling, and it was a lot of just very personal things, very heartbroken things, very analytical things. Like I'm asking my friends questions, I'm trying to sort it out, but it wasn't necessarily for the purpose of publication. But I looked at it a couple months later and I was like, wait a minute, I think I accidentally wrote a book.
There you go.
Wow.
And so it was just the Lord paved this season of my life where really I had time because that's not normal in my life, and then B, I had words that had to come out.
Yeah.
I can't really explain it
Right.
otherwise. Like they just had to come out on this paper, Word document really. And then it became a book. And though it was an accident perhaps at the start, it was very purposefully and painfully edited and refined to become what you now know as Open Hands.
Always. Let me ask you this. We've written 3 books, got another 4th one coming out here this summer. But I have found over all the years that I've been that when I'm consistently writing, I stay sharper. It's healthy. It keeps this river in me flowing that I feel like is healthy. I've just noticed I'm better when I'm consistently writing. Does that connect with you? Does that make sense?
That's a great way of putting it. Yes. Because there are seasons when I feel like I'm too busy and I go crazy when that happens. It's like you bottle it up when it needs to be always going. So
See, and I've never been a real like a writer, but I recently just went through this little phase where I'm like totally getting just off of Facebook and Instagram and all these things. And
I tried to find you and I couldn't.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of sneaking away now, and I have so much free time now. 2 things: I started reading again, and I started writing. Like I started journaling, and I'm like, this is great. This is amazing.
Yeah, I would encourage, if you're listening to this podcast, that may be something you're really missing in your life that's keeping you from really maximizing your potential. Forget about writing a book. This is not about writing a book. It's just about that daily discipline of writing. Something just magic happens when you type, write, journal, whatever floats your boat, but just something amazing about that. So that's kind of the journey. It wasn't thinking about a book. You just accidentally wrote one.
And that did come out of years of journaling habits where it's like I journaled every single day for years. And as I said, like whenever I started working 4 jobs and doing college, that habit died away. And that was not good for me, right? So as soon as I had time to come back to that, it was like, oh, I have so much to say that I hadn't said in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going back to the whole I'm too busy to write thing. So this is a good warning to me to go back to that.
Okay. All right.
So you said something in that meeting that just it hit me like one of those statements, and you said it so fast. Is you said everyone wants to trust in the Lord instead of doing the things that build trust in the Lord. And that was just such a powerful statement to me. I was like, whoa. And I don't think anybody else in the room caught that. And I was like, wow. So what does that mean to you? Like, explain that a little bit.
What I talked about at the meeting was a lot about discipline. And I think it goes back to that a lot. Whenever I would ask people what it meant for them to trust the Lord, a lot of people had kind of vaguer answers or things that were rooted in the past or things that were rooted in their feelings. But I mean, you don't always have a great experience and you don't always have feelings that are pointing you in the correct direction. And so whenever I say that we want to trust the Lord, but we don't want to do the things that help us build that trust, I'm talking about like daily disciplines. And maybe that does mean journaling, or maybe that does mean going to the scripture even when you don't feel like it. It's like going to the gym, right? Like you don't become perfectly healthy and fit just because you need it tomorrow.
Right.
No,
You
it don't
need
work
to
that way.
do that consistently
Right.
in order to be able to be fit, in order to be able to be healthy. And we can think of it very easily in terms of business and the gym, I think. We're like, understand the value of putting in the work. But with our faith, we can cheapen discipline. Like, it's not meaningful if you don't feel it.
Right.
It's fake, or you're inauthentically a Christian if you're doing something that you don't feel like. But I see so much benefit in my own life and in my ability to trust the Lord whenever I practice trust, even when I don't feel like it. So, like, for me today, I have a lot on my plate today. And I was like freaking out in the car, and I was like, oh, Lord. And then I was listening to one of y'all's podcasts to kind of get more in the mood, and my phone disconnected from the car, and I was like, that's a sign, Lord, silence and prayer.
Yeah.
There
This is
you
the rest
go.
of the car ride. And so it's things like deciding to retrain my thoughts, deciding to wake up and read the Bible instead of wake up and start my day and try to be more productive.
In your
So-
book, you wrote, an open-handed life is not about changing the outcome of our lives, but about changing the position of our hearts. Explain that to us.
So my life right now looks very similar to my life 3 years ago or 2 years ago whenever I wrote the book. But I have so much more joy in the Lord and contentment with where I am at because I have learned to trust the Lord and how he's working and not make his timeline align with my timeline. So I'm still, I was talking earlier about the Pride and Prejudice party. I just turned 27.
Yeah.
And there's a line in Pride and Prejudice where Charlotte says, I'm 27 years old. I have no money, no prospects. I'm already a burden to my parents, and I'm frightened. And so I threw a whole party based on that subject because I'm still unmarried. I still do not have a lot of money.
Yeah.
I don't have, this total path ahead of me that I thought I would have at 27. Not to say that I'm old, but the way that I grew up and the way that society is kind of teaching us, you would expect, like, I should have a house, I should have a husband, I should have this sure career, I should have this much money.
Yeah.
And instead of lamenting those things, like, I threw the party in jest. Like, I wasn't actually upset about these things. And
Yeah.
I think that's the change of, like, why am I not married? Why do not I have this career that I think I should have? Why don't I own a house? All these kinds of things to look what I have. Look how the Lord is working. How can I use that for his glory? How can I trust him? How can I sit here and enjoy where I am instead of wish I would be somewhere else?
Every week, we are giving away a free copy of Philip Baker's book on our Instagram. All you have to do to enter is follow our page. Head over to life_in_action on Instagram, give us a follow, and you are entered. Easy as that. Now, back to the show.
That's great.
Philip always says, enjoy the journey.
Enjoy
I
the
love
journey.
that.
Enjoy
Yes.
the journey.
Well, Lauren, I wish we would have got a hold of this when we were in our 20s, but over 20-something years ago, Laura and I, we made a decision that we would never be any happier than we are right now. And that was over 20 years ago. I'm not happier today than I was yesterday or last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. A long time ago, we maxed out happy. And we just decided we would never be any happier. That we have maxed. Now we know challenges come, storms come. We know joy, sadness, mad. All those emotions come and go based upon the challenges of life. But happy is something different. We're all born again here. We all love us some Jesus. And God's been so good to us. What else do we need to be happy about? We all know we have eternal security. We know we're going to spend eternity. What else do we need to be happy about? Laura and I, we have maxed out happy. I'm the happiest evangelist you know. And in 5 years, I won't be any happier than I am right now. And I think at the core of this right here, it's that's what that is we're just so blessed. God's grace is amazing. We're happy. Let's enjoy the journey.
Something I've been thinking about is how whenever someone asks you how you are, the first thing that comes to your mind is usually how you are not.
Ooh, that's good. I like
And
that. Yeah.
I want to retrain myself to, let's say I am stressed or tired or whatever. Like, that shouldn't be my first response. Like, I should be thankful. And I want to retrain how I think about my life. I think it's difficult because it's harder for us to process the things that are hard. That's why there's so many sad songs.
Yeah.
Because we don't need to explain why we're happy. We need to explain why we're sad.
Oh,
And I think that's a big part of why I wrote
a whole
this
music
book.
genre is the blues. Come
Yeah,
on.
I know. I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, so, lots of that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where the Lord over and over again in his word instructs us to be thankful, instructs us to rejoice. I mean, look at Philippians 4. It says to rejoice, I think, 7 times in that one section of scripture. And that's not natural to us.
Right.
And so that's why it takes discipline and practice and pre-decision, all the things that I talk about in my book.
So in your book, you said, would we trust in God's answer, even if it was no? Would we wait for his will rather than the outcome we desired? You talk a lot about the breakup that you had in the book and going through that whole process and everything. So I feel like this statement maybe came out a little bit out of that. Can you talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind?
Yeah, not at all. I'm actually going to use a different example other than the breakup because I was thinking about this yesterday and how I prayed. This is also in the book, but I prayed every day, probably more faithfully than I've ever prayed for anything in my life, for community and friendship as a middle school and early high schooler. My dad had just started a church at that time, and I was homeschooled, and then I had a home church, and there was no one my age. So I was very isolated in this time of my life, and I love people. I'm very much a social butterfly, so this was strange to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand why God would tell me no to something that seemed his will, for us to have community, for us to have friendships, for a church to grow. And I prayed every day on my knees for 2 years, and the answer was no. And I didn't get what I had asked for until maybe 4 or 5 years later. And now I do have that, and I'm able to receive it and really be thankful for the people in my life. And more than that, I think my life has been a huge testament on how other people can find community and find friendships. That's been a big part of my ministry, of connecting the people that are on the outside. I want to just pull them in. I love finding people that are almost involved in church, almost have community. And I'm I was there for a long time, and I'm going to pull you in. I'm going to invite you to my house. I throw parties all the time, not wild parties, themed Pride and Prejudice parties. And so the answer was no for a long time, and that really hurt. But in that moment, I felt like God told me to trust him. God told me he was enough for me in that moment, even if the answer was no forever.
Yeah.
But he was good enough to me that it wouldn't be no forever.
Yeah. That's really good. I think it's funny that you keep talking about Pride and Prejudice, and Mr. Bingley is right next to you on the couch. Mr. Bingley's my dog, which he came out of Pride and Prejudice. It's great that you were extremely happy instead of being sorely vexed like her mother. A question I have, kind of focusing in on social media. So our generation was kind of a hybrid. We grew up without social media and all these cell phones and everything. And then now we're immersed in it and everything. We kind of lived in both worlds. How do you think your generation is navigating the age of social media with relationships and conflicts and just all of this stuff? And what do you see in the future for your generation?
Gosh. I think there are a few forces at play. I think COVID also really hindered our generation. I see that as also a big influence of feeling isolation. And
absolutely.
And social media seems like a Band-Aid fix to it. You can seem connected. You can seem like you have friends.
That's good.
And you really don't. It's not feeding that. It's a, fake meat of that need. I'm careful not to throw social media under the bus, though, because I have seen so much benefit from it. And it does require careful wisdom. I take a break from social media for Lent most years. I didn't this year because I published a book during Lent, and I was I probably need to post about that. But I think it's super necessary to have boundaries.
Yeah.
I'm not queen of boundaries on social media. It's difficult. And so I'm there with the people who are addicted to their phone. It's very hard, but you do have to put it in its place. And I think things like taking breaks, putting limits and having accountability is super impactful. But at the same time, I'm going to actually tell some good stories about social media because I feel like we often hate on it, but there are powerful things that can be accomplished. One of my friends that I met through blogging in high school 10 years ago or something like that. We have kept up via social media for these 10 years, and I went to go visit her last year, and it was like meeting an old friend. And she's been such a source of life in my life. Like, she gets me really well, and she lives in North Carolina, right? And another friend of hers is in Atlanta, and we have this whole little virtual friend circle, but we met in real life, and we're mutually encouraging each other. One of the girls just texted me, which photo should I choose as my album cover for this song I'm recording? Like, I've seen a lot of fruit. The party I threw on Monday, 2 of the girls that attended that party are some of my closer friends, and I only know them because they DM'd me on Instagram asking to meet up. So there are opportunities on social media. So I would caution, instead of always just talking about the negative effects of social media, how about we turn it into something positive? If you're going to be on there, be social.
Be social.
Comment. Like, make an effort to use this for God's glory as opposed to just shaming people who use it in general.
Use it and don't let it use you.
Yes. Like, I see such benefit from it if used well. And so I think when we shift the perspective to how can we use this for God's glory as opposed to, oh my goodness, this is ruining our generation, because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's not.
Right. We're not going to, Gen Z is going to use social media, whether you think it's good or not. And so putting good on there, I think, is important. And it's been a challenge for me because I'm very open on social media and have been convicted that this is a platform, right? I was speaking to the Lord and I said, Lord, I really want to ask you for bigger things. I want to speak to thousands. Like, I want to use this because I sense this is the direction that you have in my life. And the next week, 500,000 people view one of my Instagram reels. And I'm like, well, there's the thousands.
Yeah, really. That's
and
awesome.
so I didn't even think about that. And I thought, wait a minute, I actually asked that last week. And then
Maybe
the
I
Lord
need to ask
answered.
that for our reels.
Yeah, let's pray that. Lord, we asked for thousands.
That's awesome.
So-
One of my friends, his name's Israel. I met him on Instagram, and I wound up bringing him to Bulgaria with us on one of our pastor conferences, and he got really changed when we went over there.
Absolutely.
And I met him on Instagram.
Yeah.
Just through stock trading and stuff like that. So, do you have any questions? I'm going to jump with another question.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I kind of want to talk about marriage a little bit here. So I have 2 daughters. One's 24 and one's just turned 20. What would you say to girls or guys who are in a hurry to get married? Because this is the South. The culture is hurry, hurry, get married, have kids by the time you're 20 years old. So what would you say to that generation just coming up that are like feel pressured to get married? Like my daughter's, she doesn't have a boyfriend and she has really no prospects or anything right now, but she's in South Korea living her life, having fun, you know?
Yeah.
Gosh, I feel that. And that's hard. I think it's really difficult to have that as a goal, right? But not try to get there too quickly.
Yeah.
Because I've swung in both directions. I have been so not in a hurry that perhaps I have been complacent, right? And that can be one area of struggle for people of like, well, the Lord's just going to provide. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but the mailman is probably not going to be hot your age and a Christian. So you might have to put work into that. But how to do that work in a way that's open-handed is so hard. How can we hold relationships, things that we care deeply about, loosely, right? For me, a practice that has really helped me is that in the early stages of dating, it's a weak relationship. It cannot hold the weight of marriage. And we put marriage heavy things on a non-marriage supporting base.
That's good.
And it collapses.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure. Like some of my friends have had failed engagements or other things because they rushed into things. And then right at the end, they're like, wait a minute, we hadn't really considered what we're doing. So there's no hurry. I know that we can feel like, oh my goodness, this is my person. This is the one. I think we should trust our feelings very little whenever we are involved with a romantic relationship. Okay? Be very slow. Have other people speak into your life.
Right.
I am a part of this Facebook group where there's like people asking questions about dating and stuff. It's very entertaining for me. And this one girl was like, in just such a frenzy. Oh my goodness, how do I know when we should get engaged? How do I know? I feel this, I feel that. I'm like, girl, you're basing everything off of your feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not the word, and not patience, and not your community. Those are things that are going to guide you well.
Yeah.
So I would say in that first starting relationship, and maybe this is even going to be applicable for business and friendships, right? We can't put future worries on a current thing. And so that's really freed me up not to interview people on the first date, for example.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's really good.
I would think just hearing your story, you know, and the theme parties and dress up and Pride and Prejudice. I'm probably looking at a young lady that for a long time, you know, the colors, you know, the flowers, you know, the location. I mean, because you're bent that way anyway. And I mean, the bridesmaid dresses, the wedding dress, because, you know, you love a party. That's part of your, so I'm sure you've got so many ideas about what you want the wedding to look like. And I think today we live in a society where young people, they're far more interested in the wedding than they are the marriage.
Yes.
They're far more interested in the fantasy than they are the reality. But after that wedding, after that honeymoon, when no one cares and it's just time to get down to life and live, you know, reality sets in and it's like, oh, this is real now. And so, you know,
I actually have not. One time I thought I was going to get married, so then I was planning the wedding. But apart from that, I'm actually really cautious not to.
It's good.
Even from a young age, but I don't think it was good. Because, and this is, I think, also addressing young people who feel that pressure. I felt like it was too dangerous to dream for something that I couldn't control. And so I've always been very career focused, not because I didn't want to get married and have kids and be the Southern mama that my mom was, but because I was afraid God wouldn't give that to me. And so I didn't make the Pinterest board. I didn't think about a wedding. And it was really a position of fear as opposed to a position of trust.
Yeah.
And so I would also challenge people who, and wherever you are afraid to dream of things. It's okay to dream. Like, God isn't going to give you second best. He's not going to tease you with your desires for be it a business or a marriage. He is a good God. He put those desires on your heart, and he's capable of doing far more abundantly than all you ask or imagine.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was actually a position of trust to ask the Lord for marriage and to ask the Lord for a husband that would honor him and love me well. And that has been a really humbling experience to act in that, to take steps towards that, to be like, okay, I'm going to walk in trust as opposed to fear in terms of specifically marriage, but it could be also many other things.
Yeah. And that's what your book is about trusting God. It's about really just saying, God. When you spoke and I saw the title, I was like, Open Hands. Is that about like giving away stuff or receiving things, something like that? But really, like you said in your book, it's about not holding tight to the things that you want or you think you need. It's opening them up and trusting God to say, and that's hard, isn't it? Yeah, that's takes trust. If you grew up in my house, you'd have my wife. She was very big on don't get married right away. Go see the world, go live your life. Like, that's the message that's preached under my roof. And so that's probably why my daughters are just like not in a hurry to get married. And, you know, my youngest daughter, she's 20 years old. She's never even had a boyfriend, you know?
My family is, I guess we've ended up being similarly. None of us are like very boy crazy, for example. But I've almost regretted a little bit, like putting it off so much, because it's not to sound discouraging, but it only gets harder. And I think that if that's something I want, like, it does take work, and a little bit of foresight is helpful as well. Yeah. But I mean, I also love traveling, and I've done a lot of things that I couldn't have done if I was married, like owning a business and having all these jobs. I'm so busy, I don't even have time to go on a date this week. So,
well, I think you're going to be fine in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, talking about starting your own business, so can you explain a little bit about what you do, and then what you've learned so far starting this entrepreneur life?
So I went to Disney World in 2017 with the Disney College program, and I fell in love with the magic of Disney. Some people asked me if after working there and seeing how it works and going behind the stage and in the utilidors, if it ruined the magic. And I was like, oh no. It made it so much more magical because I saw the thought, the effort, the intentionality behind everything that Disney does. And so I was so enamored with their customer experience, with their dedication to brand. And I came home to Lake Charles and was depressed. I was like, I miss Disney World. And I didn't want to stay in Disney World, but I missed how they made people feel and how they pulled people in. And one of my friends, while I worked there, worked for a company where they did character events, where they dressed up like a princess and attended children's birthday parties. I didn't know that existed. And I was in an entrepreneurship class at Big Nice, so I was all inspired. And then my next class was a media ethics class, and it was so boring. And so in my media ethics class for an entire semester, I planned my business and I had saved my money in high school for like, I would spend almost nothing. I saved thousands of dollars and I said I would either with this money go to Europe or start a business. And then I did both in a year. And I was broke twice. I went to Europe for the summer, spent all I had, worked my booty off the fall, started a business, spent all I had again, and I have not been broke since. So there we go.
All right.
So where in Europe did you go?
That summer, I went to London, and I studied theater, and I took trips to Ireland, Scotland, France, and Germany.
Nice. Where did you study theater?
It was this program through a Texas university that went into, I don't know, it's complicated, but we went to lots of shows. I really wasn't interested in the study part as much as the tourist part.
Yeah, sure.
But it was such a cool experience, and I've been back to Europe, and I'm going back again this year. So
I was a theater major.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
I actually graduated high school and I got a theater scholarship, and I went for 2 years and was on stage and loved it. And then my dad really thought I was going to Hollywood. He's like, that's next step. You're going to Hollywood. And God arrested me. And I said, Dad, I'm supposed to go to Bible college. And Philip was actually my dean in Bible college. And so, and he was so disappointed. He was like, why? You need to be going to Hollywood. I was like,
right.
I said, I got to obey God. And I wound up going a different direction. But I love the theater. I love the arts. And so,
well, I love Ireland and Scotland.
You love Ireland and Scotland.
So
Ireland was
that's
beautiful.
that's my major. We'll spend the rest of our life going in and out of Ireland and Scotland.
Yes,
it's just
sir.
that's kind of home away from home.
Yes.
Love that place.
Switzerland I've tried to get him to Switzerland.
I'm
I
going.
went to
Beautiful.
Switzerland last
I'm
year.
going.
Huh?
Yes, it
going.
was very expensive.
What's your favorite place in Europe?
Oh, let's see.
It's a hard question.
Last year, I went to go visit one of my friends who lives in Germany. I fell in love with just the people there. Like, everyone there was so kind to me. And that was a really unique experience. But I do have to say Italy.
Italy's
I loved
amazing.
Italy. We backpacked through northern Italy, and I haven't stopped eating pasta since.
Did you go to the Dolomites? That's in northern Italy, isn't it?
No, we went to Cinque Terre and
Okay.
Florence and Venice.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
I've
didn't.
been there.
I didn't really love Venice, so
I
that was
didn't either.
my hot take is don't go to Venice.
Yeah.
It is only tourist, very hard to get around, and if you can go, only go during off season.
Yes. That's Italy in general. Don't go during
But
the
Venice is like so narrow that it's like everywhere you went, you're like having to touch other people. I wasn't a big fan. It smelled bad.
Yeah.
It was beautiful, and I'm glad I saw it, but I wouldn't go back.
Yeah. Well,
But
cool.
yes, I love going to Europe. I'm going to Morocco. To another one of my friends is getting married in Morocco, so I bought tickets last week to go to her wedding. It's going to be like village Morocco life. Like, this is very different
Awesome.
than Europe. And on the way back, I have a day in Paris.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Well, how does your business work? Kind of what's
Yes.
just
Back. We
Sorry,
got
I'm-
off topic.
My ADD.
how does it how does it work? What's it called? Just kind of
Yes.
break it down for us. What do you do, girl?
I make people's dreams come true.
I love that.
And I create events people didn't know they needed. And so my umbrella idea is bigger than what I even currently do.
Now, do you give people choices on the themes, or do they just trust you?
So primarily I do character events. And so parents will hire me to come to their child's birthday party or some other kind of child event. And I will send someone, or it'll be me, who will be dressed as a character. So
Okay.
that could be Cinderella. That could be Spider-Man. That could be the Wicked Witch. You know, like I have I think 20 or so different characters and about 10 different cast members. And so it's fun because you appear there and the kids are like, oh my goodness, Cinderella came to my living room. You know, like you are on the TV and then you're in their birthday party and to see their little faces. But the way I do it that I think sets me apart from even other businesses like mine is that I really take the pressure off of the parents.
Okay.
So I don't just send a character out to sit there and visit for an hour. I send a character with an itinerary of games with her own crafts. She's ready to read a story. She's going to sing a song. She's going to gather all the kids to take a picture with everyone.
That's awesome.
She's going to lead you into singing happy birthday and set you off. So you don't have to, the parents don't have to really plan anything for the party. My character shows up, pulls off the entire children's event, and then leaves.
You
And
are
there's
the party.
I am the party.
That's well worth whatever you charge.
Yes, it's fun.
I would be like, take all my money.
So much fun. And it's just cool to see, especially repeat kids. There's some kids that I've gone to their party for 4 years in a row. Like I feel like I know these kids, even though they have only seen me as different characters. And I also do styled picnics. This is a little bit harder to facilitate given the bipolar nature of Louisiana weather, but I have like low picnic tables, and this is more better suited for say proposals or tea parties or birthday parties, a little bit more on the adult event side of things. But that one has been really hard, if I'm being honest, to maintain because it takes up a lot of my time, and I could do like 3 princess parties in the span of one picnic and make more money. So I have really emphasized the princesses over the picnics until I can train someone else to do the picnics.
Yeah. Focus on what God's blessing and
Yes,
do more of that.
run with it.
If you ever need on the weekends, if you ever need like an old middle-aged guy, I mean, I'm like, I'm free. You know?
I'll hit you up.
Everybody's like, man, we want middle-aged dad at our party.
Somebody might want Shrek to come over.
That's great.
Yeah. Middle-aged Hispanic man here to the rest. Well, cool. So, kind of turn the corner here a little bit. In your book, kind of hinted a little bit about a little stint you had with like going through an eating disorder. You want to talk about that a little bit, or how that affected you, or how that happened?
So I was a ballerina for 20 years. I feel like that's a good enough explanation as to why I struggled. It's a very difficult place to be. And there are, I mean, every girl, especially, and guy, I don't know how guys think, but I know how girls think. And it's difficult to look on Instagram and see these perfectly edited or just naturally beautiful people. I'm not here to shame someone who's skinny and perfect. Like, God gave him that body too. But there was a lot of pressure on me to be this perfect little ballerina, and I hated the idea of change. And so I resisted it from like puberty onwards, and it got worse as I got into high school. But I didn't see that I had a problem. My mom's like, Hannah, you need to go to therapy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't got a problem. And so really it was the Lord woke me up. I mean, it was a miracle that I somehow fix my own problem. I wouldn't recommend this way. I would recommend going to therapy and like having someone else help you, but the Lord just kind of opened my eyes, and I recognized that my behaviors were not honoring to the Lord. And back to that discipline thing, I just made myself eat. I was like, I'm just going to be disciplined about this, and I'm not hungry and I don't like it, but I force fed myself peanut butter, which I guess is actually how they treat anorexic patients, and I didn't even know that. The Lord just is like peanut butter, and I was like, cool, peanut butter.
Peanut butter is the miracle food.
Peanut butter saved my life. And it was a discipline thing to let go of how I thought I should look, right? This applies to the same thing. I let go of how my life should look, but I let go of how my body should look, and I trusted the Lord to be healthy. I'm like, I'm going to eat. I'm going to make healthy decisions with my health and my body and what I consume, even though I don't feel like it, and even though I'm releasing like how I thought I should look.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. I'm the kind of part of who I am. I don't like the idea of anything controlling me. You know, it's like even chapstick. You know, chapstick bothers me because you can get addicted to chapstick. Your lips stop making moisture, and so that's control. You got this little $2 thing in your hand that's nose spray. There's people that are addicted to nose spray because you get rebound, and then you get over into drugs, you get over into alcohol, you get into nicotine, you get into, Adderall. I mean, the list goes on and on of all the things in life that if you let it will control you. That's what we're talking about social media. It's one thing to use it, but it's another thing to be controlled by it. We're going to be doing a podcast here soon on just on that subject. And so for you, was that part of that equation, is waking up one day and realizing this thing is controlling me? Can you kind of speak to that, or did that play a factor, in coming out of it?
I think when you're talking about any kind of addiction or disorder, there's a lot of lies that you believe. Mm-hmm. And specifically with eating disorders, you actually do not see correctly. So when you look in the mirror, you see a lie. So it isn't accurate. And so what the Lord woke me up, how I had that wake up moment, is I think he took those lies and just unveiled me. And I saw what was real. And I was like, what's really happening is unhealthy. And I really don't know how to step 1, 2, 3 on to just ask the Lord to unveil your eyes to see what's controlling you, and not to see the lies that you've built up. And that's not always intentional. And that's not always something that you recognize. Like, I didn't know I was believing a lie until the Lord opened my eyes. And so being able to ask the Lord to unveil our eyes as to what is distorting our vision for our life, for our health, for our habits, that honestly is what made me make that 160 or 180 here. Really probably more like 160. It took some extra effort to keep that going.
Yeah.
And then continuing to walk in that. And I still struggle. Like, I still struggle with like how I think about how I look or comparing myself to other people. But I get to make the decision to be like, no, I'll be thankful instead.
Yeah.
And really, it's in the last couple of years that I've really celebrated how I've actually enjoyed my body more than in before. And stepping away from ballet also helped with that.
I love it. I love what you said, unveil my eyes. I don't use those words. The analogy I always use is, a lie, the enemy, the devil, whatever you want to put on that. He's an expert at slipping into your blind spot. When you're driving a car, there's that blind spot back there. How many times have we tried to get over into a lane and no one was there, and then all of a sudden someone's honking at us, and then you're like, I didn't even see. Man, the devil does that. A lie will do that. Deception will do that. It slips into your blind spot and just wreaks havoc in our life, and we don't even know it's there. And a lot of times we'll blame people. We'll blame the devil. We'll blame ourselves. But when really there's the enemy is right there, and it's wreaking havoc in our life. And unveil my eyes. I always say, Holy Ghost, adjust my mirrors.
I like that too.
Holy Ghost, adjust my mirrors so I can see what's in my blind spot. And then when you see it, God's not going to do anything about your enemy in your blind spot. He told you to. You don't talk to God about your mountain. The Bible tells us to talk to the mountain about our God. It's our job to run that devil off, our job to run that lie off. God will reveal it, but you got to take authority over it. And that's why I admire what you did, because, God showed you. He opened up your eyes to what was going on, and, man, the Spirit of God rose up in you, and you took care of it. And I know it didn't happen overnight.
No.
We don't want anyone to think it was easy, right?
No.
It took time, but
Yes.
you made it through.
I think going off of that.
Come on.
I drive a convertible that have very big blind spots. So whenever I have to turn lanes, I have to like lean over. Check over here.
Come on.
And I was in Houston, and there was one time I was like, oh crap, I'm leaning to check the blind spot, but then I swerve over here, and luckily nothing happens. But I think in life, oftentimes what gets us is not us trying to correct something, it's the overcorrection or the overcompensation.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And so in ballet, there's a lot of balancing. And my favorite analogy is whenever I'm trying to balance, I think the thing that throws me off my leg the most is the overcompensation. So I'm falling one way, and instead of staying in the unbalance long enough to know exactly how much effort it's going to put me on my leg, I immediately swing this way and fall that other way. And so in life, the same way, like we might see like, oh, I have this blind spot. Well, let's take an eating disorder for an example. Oh, I have this disorder, and we can be like total body acceptance, eat, Doritos all day, like swing the other way. And we really haven't landed in a healthy place still. And so we need to learn how to stay in this unbalanced position long enough to know, oh, this is where I need to go. Not making these knee-jerk reactions with our lives, which we see all the time.
Absolutely.
And this like that I can balance on my toes, one foot for like a minute, just because I can do that.
Wow.
You know? And don't ask me to demonstrate that.
All right, I got a question.
Yes.
Okay. So, you have these different disciplines, whether, it's, like if you're fighting boxing, you're going to have issues, with your hands.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in baseball, if you're a pitcher, you're going to have issues with your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Football, those guys, it's their knees, and different things. And so, when I see ballet, you see these bodies, these lean bodies, but everything is on the toes and the feet and that whole deal. So what is the impact on toes, feet, long term? What do ballet dancers have to deal with, because of that discipline? What's the price that you pay for that kind of life?
Funny thing is I have broken both my feet and sprained ankles and done all the injuries, and a broken bone you can heal from, but man, those sprains are hard. Like I'm stiff sometimes with my ankles. So I have paid the price for doing ballet, broke both feet on point. One time it was like right before a show. This is a funny story. So I was praying on my way to a show. I was probably in college at the time, and I definitely was. It was 2019. It was right after I started my business, actually. In 2019, I'm a senior in college. I have 4 jobs, and I'm in this show. Yes, and I was running late. And so I was praying in the car as opposed to in the bedroom. I was like, Lord, your will be done, whether I do the very best possible, or I'm like thinking, what's the worst that can happen? And I had broken my foot before a couple of years ago. And I'm thinking, or if I break my foot, and I have this feeling that I'm going to break my foot. And I'm like, nah. I get out of the car, I get my tutu, I put my shoes on, we do our first run through, and immediately I slip and break my foot. And I'm on the ground.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, well, God, we talked about this. And I can trust you even though we did in fact break the foot.
Yeah.
And that moment of clarity did not last long, and I definitely cried a lot, but it was just so interesting to see how the Lord was like, I've got you, worst case scenario. And yep, that was really hard. I had to go back and rehearse my students, and everyone was crying. That was maybe a hardest day of my life. I don't know. It was a very emotional day. Yeah. And it was difficult because I had just started my business, and I was the only person that was going to do parties. But now I'm in a boot for 2 months. So immediately my sister had to step up. She did the first parties because I couldn't. And so I also learned the necessity of having other people in your life. Like I couldn't have done it all by myself, even though I wanted to. And the Lord was like, you're going to be dependent and you're going to slow down because you are going way too fast. I wouldn't have finished the year with the amount of clarity and joy had I not been forced that summer to slow down.
You've been a busy little girl for a long time, and Europe and all that, and ballet and the business. I think you need to take a moment and just talk to us about your parents and what they mean to you, and what role they've played in all this, because it's kind of hard for me to imagine you could have pulled all this off and be the person you are without them. What are they like, and what do they mean to you? And just talk to us about your parents for a moment.
Yes, I love this question. My mom homeschooled me my whole life until a senior in high school, and so that's a very big impact on my life. Sometimes for hard because it made me lonely at times, but ultimately created a really firm discipline in me of Christian worldview. I wasn't taught in another way. Like I was taught Christian worldview. I was taught other worldviews. Like I'm aware of how other people think, and honestly, probably more than they are. And that was such a foundation. My mom is very studious. She's super intellectual. She's kind of a quiet soul. And when I was little, I was a lot like my mom, very homebody, not as ambitious. I said no more than I said yes. And then as I got older, I became a little bit more like my dad. Now, my dad is a multi-entrepreneur, very excited, very passionate, brings people alongside him. He started a laundry business. He left commercial banking and owns laundromats now so that he could have a flexible lifestyle in order to do ministry. So we did the church. He has since opened a barbecue restaurant. So I have today, we're not open on Mondays, but or today's Tuesday.
Wednesday,
we're not open on Tuesdays, but tomorrow or whenever you're in Lake Charles, Wednesday through Saturday, you need to go to Paul's Rib Shack Barbecue. Try the turkey. That's my favorite. And the bread pudding.
We'd be going there today if it was.
Yeah, I should have brought y'all some leftovers.
I was going to take you last time.
We are a protein people right here.
It's
I
really
love
good.
it.
Their ribs. Oh. Okay, I need a moment. They're so good.
So your dad, your mom and dad are they're force of nature.
Yes. So my dad, I'm more like my dad now. I think very want the flexible life. So I want to influence people, want to do all the things, and I have his same shortcomings too of like biting off more than you can chew, and having struggle organizing everything to where it's efficient. But I have really appreciated how both of my parents, when I'm in a pickle, I know they're there, right? When I broke my foot, first person I call is my dad. He leaves. He comes, picks me up. Like, it's not a question of where I'm supported. I'm incredibly supported by my parents, even still. So going back to the whole Pride and Prejudice, I'm already a burden to my parents. I know that that's not true. I actually hosted the party at their house.
Talking about discipline, because you're such a disciplined person, which is really something that I noticed like right away. I was like, this girl has some discipline in her life. And discipline is painful. Like you were talking about your ballet and stuff. I mean, to do ballet your whole life, there's a lot of commitment and pain involved in that. And there's two kinds of pains in life. There's the pain of discipline and there's the pain of regret. And life, if you don't choose one of those two, life is going to choose it for you. And if you let life choose it, it's always going to choose regret. It's always going to make that decision for you. In your life, though, I'm really curious is how do you start your morning? Like, how do you start your day? What is your routine because I know you have one. What is that routine, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what is that that you have to do every day that...
Something that's been challenging is that this last season of my life hasn't been very predictable. And so it does depend on the day. And however disciplined I sound, I'm not this morning person. I'm not like getting up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym. I get up at 7:30 and I read the Bible and I make my cup of coffee and I don't rush that. Like I actually have a very slow morning, but I usually work into the evening. So kind of like I start my day later, I end my day later. That's kind of how my job works. And I work weekends too. So I make sure to like take the morning. I spend a long time in scripture. I study and I read. I have a lot of roommates, so they probably interrupt me. And then I'll get started work. I work from home for a lot of what I do. So like running my business, and I do marketing for the Rib Shack and Laundry World. So I'll get that done in the morning. I'll go to the gym in the mid-morning because it's not busy and I don't have to worry about, college kids. And then I usually do something social every day. I love investing in people. And so people take priority over business for me every day, even if it's sometimes rather costly. Like last week, I threw like 4 parties and I didn't know I was going to do that. And I like threw together a wedding for one of my friends. She goes, I'm going to courthouse tomorrow. I'm like, what? We need to do something. So we throw together a wedding in a day and we're like going crazy. I throw her a bachorette party. So I'm very flexible and interruptible. That's not my nature. So I did cry afterwards, but it's, I think the Lord has shown me, like one time I had just kind of ended a season of really hard work and I thought, oh my goodness, I have all this time. I can accomplish my business goals. I can sit down and work and really get it done. And every time I sat down to get the work done, I was rather obviously interrupted. Someone needs this. This person needs to visit. You're going to go have lunch with this girl. And it was just like, Lord, I got nothing done. And the Lord's like, no, you got done what I wanted you to get done.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so I have learned to hold my schedule loosely.
There you go.
And that's not natural to me, but yes. So my schedule is inconsistent, but I think that's kind of where the Lord has me.
We're all working on that.
It starts with the word. And we get done when we need to get done.
I've kind of struggled with that. Like, I'm not a person who plans my life. I let life happen And I'm like, I kind of do that as well. It's like, I'm not like, where are you going to be in 5 years? I have no idea. I'm going to be with God in 5 years, and whatever he wants me to do in those 5 years, that's what I'll do. And that's very like entrepreneurial cultural right now, is you gotta plan. And I'm like, no, you just kind of.
You don't know what's going to happen.
No.
What does James say? You're saying, in this year, we're going to go to that city and do this thing, and you don't even know what's happening tomorrow.
That's
so
right.
my mantra in life is tomorrow's worries. Because in Matthew 6, Jesus says, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Yes. And I can often get worried about things. Most of the time, I'm worried about getting all the things done. And I'll stop myself. I'll be like, that's tomorrow's worries. I'm going to leave that to tomorrow to worry about. And it's, again, one of those little redirection things. And I will literally just leave it and think about something else. Tomorrow's worries has been such a freedom for me whenever I'm not sure how the week is going to go, or even today. I could be like next hour's worries. Because Jesus knew perfectly what it was to be a human and all the stresses that we face. And he also knew perfectly what it is to be God and the creator of humans. And in all this perfect knowledge of our struggle and of our purpose, he says you can handle approximately and exactly one day at a time.
Yeah. What is it? Today is the tomorrow you were worrying about yesterday.
You know what? I need another cup of coffee before I can figure that out.
I heard that. I don't know if it was. I heard that in your book or somewhere. I don't know where I got that from, but
Today is the tomorrow you
were fretting over.
Tomorrow is the day you talked about yesterday. So everybody's always talking about tomorrow, but when tomorrow comes, it's yesterday. So get it done today.
Yeah, and
Get
enjoy
done
it.
today. Classic Mike Murdoch.
I want to end, and then we're going to go into the famous 7 questions.
And then we got to tell everybody how they can get a hold of her.
Oh,
book,
yeah, we're definitely
business, Instagram. You
Yep.
got to get it ready, girl, so everybody can find you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You did this quote a few times in your book, and I really, really love it. It's Corrie ten Boom.
I was hoping you were going to pull that up.
Yes. You probably know it by heart, so I'll let you say it.
You can say it. I
I'll
might
say
mess
it.
up.
It kind of just sums up your whole book, and it's so good. It says, hold everything in your hand lightly. Otherwise, it hurts when God pries your fingers open.
Ooh.
I know. Isn't that so good?
Man, that's really good.
And Corrie ten Boom said that, and you know it has some weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love her.
But if you don't get her book, then you're a fool, because it is so good. I kept reading this book going, man, this sums up so many thoughts and feelings that we have about trusting God, and it just really breaks it down and kind of gives you a different perspective, and really just makes you think, man, when I have something, I just need to trust God, and I just need to pry my hands open, and just let God.
And I think one of the things I've been preaching a lot this year in churches has been about that word trust. And what makes it even more powerful is everyone trusts something. We're all trusting. And if you're not trusting God, then you are trusting people. Or you're trusting yourself. Well, the thing about people is if you try to put your trust in people, you're going to be disappointed. That's going to lead to offense and bitterness, because you're going to wind up doing for people they're not going to do for you. People that you think should be there for you won't be there for you. People are always going to let you down eventually, but God never will. And so trusting in God is it's not a luxury. It's a necessity, and the option, the alternative is people, yourself, the government, the world. You're just setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment.
I'll talk about that in
100%.
one of the chapters where I talk about the idea of trusting the Lord 100%. And we can know that, first of all, God is 100% worthy of our trust.
Come on.
And so
good.
that's where you have to go to the Word. How else would you know that? We don't just automatically know all these things about God. We get to study them and have the discipline to figure out that God is 100% worthy of our trust. But that goes to your point over here, is that everything else is 100% unworthy of our trust.
Yeah.
And so I actually walked through all these things you just said in my book about how you can't trust in princes, you can't trust in the government, you can't trust in your own ability, you can't trust in the weather. Like, these things are unreliable for us, but the Lord is. And then you can learn the next step is that it's 100% good to trust God. Because sometimes I have this fear that trusting God means that I'm going to get handed a hard life. Like, if I trust God 100%, that means I'm going to have to move to Africa, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe so.
Yeah.
That might be
But
amazing.
He knows what's best for you more than you know what's best for you.
Yes, and just to trust that that's good
Yeah.
and not a necessary step of growth and make it so stiff and unpersonal. Like, that's personally good to you, and to trust Him is
My favorite chapter in your book is the book chapter about Job, because nobody wants to read Job. I didn't want to read Job.
I
but-
certainly didn't either.
No, but it
I was
gave
like,
me-
Lord, what are we doing?
It gave me such a new perspective about Job, and I was like, oh man, it was so good. So tell us how to get the book.
Yes.
You're listening to this podcast. How can we get your book?
So if you are buying online, it is pretty much anywhere where books are sold online. So Target, Walmart, Books A Million. Amazon is the top supplier, and it is nice if you buy it on Amazon, because then you can leave a review on Amazon, and that's beneficial to me. So if you're buying it online, I would go to Amazon, and you can search Open Hands by Hannah Petterefer. It'll have this little black
Beautiful
hand
cover.
figure with the
Yeah.
flowers coming out of it, and much appreciated. If you are in Lake Charles, you can buy a signed copy at Paul's Rib Shack or at Imperial Calcasieu Museum in their
Oh.
gift shop.
I love it.
So those are places you can get signed copies, or you can buy them on Amazon.
Okay.
And leave a review if you have read it, because that's super helpful for authors.
100%. I bought 4
Yes.
copies, but about 2, I gave 2 away, and the 2 that I got, I'm sending to my daughters in South Korea.
I'm honored.
Love it.
yes.
Yeah,
Love
so
it.
you signed them, their names on those.
Yes.
For
What about social media?
It's Princess Hannah Writes, because whenever I started the book journey, they were saying that I should create a separate Instagram for my book, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna have one Instagram to rule them all.
Yeah.
I really manage like 7 accounts, but
Yeah.
for my personal one, it's a little bit of business, it's a little bit of book, it's a little bit of themed party, it's kind of
Yeah.
everything, because I think that's kind of what God. My blog is called Grace in Everything. So even in high school, I was like, I need to be a lifestyle where you can see God's grace in everything that I do, not just the strictly spiritual things.
So say that again. Where do they find you? About the business?
So my Instagram is Princess Hannah Writes. And
We'll
you
put that
can-
in the show notes.
Yep.
Yep,
And
we're gonna
that
put it in
is
the
where you
notes.
can find most of the things about my book and keeping up with me and any other speaking events that I have going on. My business is called Magical Moments. The website's magicalmoments.us, and the Instagram is Magical Moments Princesses.
Cool.
Love
Very
it.
good.
I love it. Well, we've got a tradition.
Okay.
7 questions. You don't get to think. It's just right off the top of your head. We
Yes,
want
sir.
these real.
Ooh.
It's all fun. So just relax.
Yes, sir.
But just 7 questions, kind of, so everybody kind of get to know you a little bit. All right, you ready?
Yes,
all right,
sir.
you're on the clock. Number 1, favorite movie?
Tangled.
Tangled. That sounds about right.
There's an illustration about that in the book,
Yeah.
so just teasing you. There are Disney references.
All right. 3 people, living or dead. It can't be Jesus, because Jesus would always be on there, that you'd like to have lunch with.
Ooh, we gotta say Corrie ten Boom. That's
All right. 1.
Audrey Hepburn, love her, and Taylor Swift.
Okay. All right. Number 3, besides the Bible, book that impacted your life the most.
I really enjoyed reading Simply Tuesday by Emily Freeman.
Okay.
It helped me love the little things in life.
I love it. Number 4, dream destination. Where do you want to go that you hadn't been yet?
I was just thinking about Greece this morning, so Greece.
Greece. You need to
Just
talk
went
to
to
him about
Greece.
Greece.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Number
tell you how to
5,
do Greece.
best decade for music. What's your jams?
To be honest, I'm kind of like a current girl. Like, I kind of like listen to whatever is newer.
So this
but
generation.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Maybe early 2000s. I'm gonna
Okay.
go
If
early.
If she would have
2000s.
said the 70s, I would have just quit the podcast.
Yeah, no.
Everybody says the 70s.
You've
Yeah, no.
already given this, but I'm going to let you say it again. Your favorite quote.
My favorite quote ever?
Yeah.
I have so many though. Tomorrow's Worries. Can I say that?
Worries.
Tomorrow's
Yeah,
Worries.
you said that earlier.
Yeah.
All
Tomorrow's
right.
Worries
When
is my
you
favorite
when
quote.
when you were a teenager and giggly, who was your teenage crush?
Oh,
Celebrity crush,
really didn't
athlete
do that.
crush.
Probably Andrew Garfield because of Spider-Man.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Mr. Bingley.
Hey, you hit a home run.
Yeah,
Yes, you
great,
did.
great interview.
Thank you
Awesome.
very much.
Yes.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. I loved hearing what y'all had to say too.
Well, thanks so much for
I
coming
really
on.
enjoy it.
And maybe in the future, we'll be able to get you again after you're rich and famous and
I want to hold you
5
guys.
books. And
We'll have to go through her. He'll have to get our people to talk to her people.
Maybe. Maybe I'll be married and have 4 kids. Who knows?
We'll have them all here.
Yeah. I don't know what the Lord's going to do.
It's going to be good, though.
it's going to
Yeah,
be
it's
good.
gonna be good.
It's awesome.
Because you trust him. Mm-hmm. Oh,
Hey,
I actually have to live that book.
That's the challenge. Yes, it was hard because after I kind of decided to publish it, a lot of the things that were hard to trust the Lord in the beginning came back way harder.
Oh,
And I was
yeah?
like, oh man,
Yeah.
we're really going through it now. But it was easier to handle because I had this new set of tools.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Well, you've got 2 new fans right
Yep.
here with me and Philip. So
Yeah, and I'm a fan of you guys. I love what y'all are
appreciate it.
doing.
Thank you very much. I was like, man, this guy knows so many people like in ministry and with so many cool stories. Is we gotta like start a podcast, and so it's just turned into something really fun. I'm learning more than anybody else
Business,
from this podcast.
Ministry,
I am.
family. We just try to mix it all up because what's more
Yes.
important than those 3 things?
Yes.
Amen.
Well, cool. It's
been awesome.
Hey, we would love it if you would follow this podcast. So just go down and click follow for us. We really appreciate it. I looked at the statistics, Philip. Like half the people that listen to our podcast follow us. So how
Good.
awesome would it be if like everyone did? So that's you listening right now. Go over to Instagram and check us out on lifein_action and follow there. And you might win a book. You might win one of Philip's books.
Absolutely.
So, and I think we'll probably give away one of Hannah's books
That
too.
would
So
be awesome.
Cool.
I think so. Awesome. Hey, I can't wait to do the next one.
Absolutely. Y'all have a great day. God bless.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Woohoo! We are done.
That was fun.
Follow our podcast for more great episodes and check us out on Instagram at lifein_action. Thank you for listening and live your life in action.